Hi there, my name's Ben and I like to read. Today we're going to be reviewing the third book in Frank Herbert's Dune series, and that is Children of Dune. Now, like I said in my previous video on Dune Messiah, I won't be going into a big contextualization of the scope of the series, and I won't be going into a summary of the author's life. Feel free to check out my first video on Dune, which is 2 episodes previous, to get the necessary context for that. I'm just going to hop right in where we left off from Dune Messiah. So this is about 9 years after Paul Atriedes has gone truly blind and has walked into the desert. His 2 children, the twins Leto II and Ghanima, who are pre-born, essentially young Kwisatz Haderachs, have been placed in. They are the heirs of his empire. However, they're under the guardianship of their aunt Alia, who is also pre-born, which happened in the events of the first novel. However, there's a little bit of a twist here. She's married the Gola of Duncan, Idaho, who was introduced in the previous book, Dune Messiah. However, unfortunately, she has fallen to abomination, and she has been possessed by none other than the Baron, her grandfather. So, doesn't bode well for the young Ghanima and Leto II. Compounded onto that is that they are subject to yet another plot to overthrow the Atreides, this time mainly orchestrated by the sister of, or I should say, the sister of Irulan, yes, the daughter of the now deceased Emperor Shaddam. Her name is Wensicia. She wants to install her son Farad'n on the throne. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He's more of a bookish type. He's much more concerned, with knowledge. He is a Kwisatz Haderach potential. However, his traits manifest a little bit differently. He's very studious, and of course very questioning. He doesn't have that inborn ruthless streak, even though his mother tries to domineer him into doing that. In essence, the plot of the novel is another recurring subplot, I should say, before we get into the main one, is that Paul Atriedes walked into the desert 9 years ago. For all intents and purposes, Paul Atriedes, Muad'Dib, is dead. Or is he? Because now there is this shadowy figure who has emerged from the Forbidden Zone, from the Forbidden Desert, who is only known as the Preacher. And he has been essentially calling out the fossilized institutions of the Church of Muad'Dib and all of that the Atreides have built. In a sense, he's committing heresy. He's attacking Paul Muad'Dib's legacy. However, many people say he sounds like him, that he looks like him. Is it him? Only time will tell. At least at the beginning of the book, it's left deliberately ambiguous for quite some time. In essence, because of all of these problems, the Lady Jessica, Paul's mother, who is absent from the second book, makes a return, and she returns to Arrakis to determine whether or not her grandchildren have fallen to abomination. She's now working for the Bene Gesserit again, but she's also determined that her own daughter, Alia, has fallen to abomination, and so she strives to protect her grandchildren. The assassination plot tries to go ahead. Of course, being prescient themselves, the twins sense this, and they concoct a plan in order to make it seem as though Leto died, when in fact he's going off to find a forbidden Fremen sietch, which is one of their little villages called Jakurutu, which is essential to the same prophetic dream that he keeps having and that his father had before him, wherein a golden path is laid out in order for humanity to follow. This is the future that Paul kept seeing in Dune Messiah, and that he was afraid to take that righteous path in order to lead humanity away from the darkness and away from the threat of extinction. But because Paul has abdicated, his son Leto now has to assume that mantle, and of course, in many respects, is much more willing to sacrifice his own humanity and himself in order to take on that vested responsibility. In essence, he becomes something that Paul never wanted to be, but also never could be. More on that later. We come to the subplot where now the Lady Jessica has been forcibly removed by Alia, and she is now training Farad and Carino in the ways of the Bene Gesserit, in order to prepare him, potentially as an ally to help out. Duke Leto makes it the young Leto makes it to Jacurudu, undergoes the spice trials at the hands of these wild Fremen, mixes with the sand trout as per his vision, and he speaks with the preacher, who is determined, spoiler alert, to be Paul Atriedes, who hasn't died, and who is continuing to, and is doing his absolute best to tear down the legacy, his own legacy, because he feels guilty. He feels guilty that he wasn't able to stop it, that he wasn't able to use his power, that he wasn't able to be the leader that he should have been, and that his son is. Paul ends up dying, murdered by Alia, his own sister, and Alia herself ends up perishing at the end of the book when Leto reemerges as right as Farad'n and the Carinos are trying to take over. He again is back, assumes the emperorship, but what's ended up happening is that he ended up fusing with a tiny little sandworm, and his body is now undergoing the process of he's wearing his skin is changing, and he's no longer becoming human. He's in the process of becoming immortal, in that sort of a sense. This is all part of his plan, and because he'll be unable to mate. He'll even be unable to. He's no longer human. Essentially, he becomes this god emperor, if you will, this half sandworm, half man, and it's really sad because this is someone who's so young, a preteen, if you will, who through being pre-born and that thus has all the genetic memories of his ancestors, including his father and his mother, and of course has undergone multiple water of life trials, hallucinatory trials, in order to determine if he is in fact the one who's going to walk the golden path. It really makes you feel for the kid. It's just that amount of dedication and bravery for someone so young yet so old in order to do what's right in the long run. Dune is very much an ends justifies the means kind of series. However, at the end of it all, I'm digressing a little bit. We'll revisit that in a small moment, but yeah, at the end of the book, Leto comes back. Farad and Carino marries Ghanima, and they're the ones who are going to produce the Atreides descendants, while now the Emperor Leto becomes this tyrant and rules over humanity with an iron fist, restricts the flow of spice, and restricts travel, murders people, is revered as a god, and he will do this until it's time for him to be murdered and for humanity to undergo what's called the scattering, which is because once the idea is that once humanity has been compressed and compressed and compressed under one figure for so long, that eventually they're going to get sick of it and they're going to develop technology that is not only invisible to prescient humans and prescient beings, but there's also going to be bloodlines, people who are essentially invisible, like who you can't see their future, which is Leto's goal all along, to prevent humanity from extinction, something that Paul Atriedes could never do. I enjoyed this book just like I did the other three. To bring it back to what I was saying before, it takes such an amazing amount of dedication and single-mindedness and bravery and a little bit of insanity from a small kid in order to be able to, to make that kind of choice. The choice that his father couldn't. And I think that it works because Paul was just a regular human before. He never had his biggest aspiration was to be the Duke of Caladan. He just wanted to have a good life. Fly planes or fighter ships, marry, have kids. Essentially, Paul Atriedes was forced against his will into this role to become the man who he was supposed to be, but he never essentially wanted it. And this is why Dune works so well. It's because, again, it shows you, okay, you have this potential, you have this destiny, you have this expectation. What are you going to do with it? And it poses an interesting question. Is it better to blindly follow on the path that's expected of you? Do you become no better than a figurehead if you do that? Or is it better to reject your potential, to reject your destiny, and to live life as a free man? I think that's a fantastic question. I don't have the answers. I wish I did. But I think that those are such meaningful and philosophical questions that like I said, Game of Thrones and all these other fantasy and Harry Potters and whatever, they could only even dream of coming up with. This is why this series works. This is why Children of Dune works as a second sequel, as the third installment. Because this is now setting up, okay, tyrants are coming. And we're really going to see what happens now in these next three books with regards to that. I mean, I still have to read them. But yeah, I have to say, pick this one up. Let me know what your thoughts were in the comments below. I would have to recommend it. I really, really do. It's call your mama, your daddy, your granny, your side bitch. Tell them to pick this book up. It is really that good. And you'll forgive me if I'm muted when in comparison to my other two reviews of this. It's just that what more can I say in praise of this series? I mean, it's exhausting almost to praise it so much. This is a little over 600 pages, so it's midway between the first book and the second book. It establishes great backstory from, or rather I should say not backstory, but it sets up the character of Leto II in such a way that you really feel bad for the kid. You really do. But I mean, again, there's a great line in there where, because obviously he's preborn and he's very much mature and he knows all these languages and all these things, things that a child could not possibly know. And he I think it's his, when he's talking with the Lady Jessica, I could be mistaken. It's been a couple weeks since I read this book. And he says, I'm paraphrasing now, he's like, when are you going to understand that you're not speaking to a child, you're speaking to someone far older than you? And he says it in a way that reminds her of the original Duke Leto, Paul's father, and it's just almost like oof, like the reader itself is almost put in the Lady Jessica's position. Is like, oh my goodness, like wow, Frank Herbert is just really, really good at. He's got such a commanding voice in the literary sense. So that's why I gotta say, don't skip out on it. Call everybody. Tell them to pick this book up. Sell this book off the shelves. Because again, if this is as good, this is a third book that does not lose steam. Like, if anything, it's just been W after W after W. How long? Like, this is 3 threes in a row, all the way from downtown. How is Frank Herbert going to continue this? I guess we'll have to read the next 3 to figure that out. So, if you've read Children of Dune and you really enjoyed it, or if you didn't enjoy it, please let me know what your thoughts were in the comments below. And if this review has compelled you to go pick it up and continue on this journey with me, please pick it up, give it a read, and let me know what your thoughts were in the comments below. Now, before I say thank you so much for watching, I do want to give a little bit of an update on the direction of the channel. This is going to be my last book review for a while, mainly because, again, I've done quite a few videos, almost 50, which is more books than I can say without conceit that most people have even read in their entire lifetime. I want to take a different direction with it. I'm not quite sure how that's going to shake out, but I would just like to take a quick word and appreciate everybody who's viewed the video so far, everybody who supported the channel so far. Thank you so much for the support and for the views and for the comments. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, get excited for the new content to come. Thank you again for watching.